good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whichever the case may be. TV Toastmasters, Advanced Club 9523 is hereby called to order. Give yourselves a round of applause. Come on. This is our July edition. 4th of July, patriotism, go team. And after the national anthem is sang correctly, we always hear, and the Yankees take the field. Today, we have an exciting and dynamic program set up for you. We have experience all the way through this lineup with only a couple of exceptions, and these are people who will be gaining experience, invaluable experience, as this meeting progresses. We have a DTM for you, a Distinguished Toastmaster, the highest rank that Toastmasters has as a Toastmaster. Carol Cormelink, former Toastmaster of the Year, Outstanding Toastmaster of the Year, will be giving you your word power, serving as a grammarian. You'll have a Tabletopics Master that's also an ATM Gold who's working on our DTM, Sheila Mudd Baker. You have a brand new speaker today, Anita Barron, who's going to be giving her icebreaker speech, her very first speech of her Toastmasters career. We're going to be looking to see where her strengths and weaknesses lay, and how she can improve, and what she's already good at. We're going to be hearing from Gordon Kelly, our president-elect of this club, who will be serving for the next year. He's going to be giving us speech number 9 out of the basic manual, which is how to persuade someone. Let's see if you're persuaded out there in TV land. We will be having humorously speaking from Joe Schwerling, our DTM, who is also our Toastmaster today. And lastly, we'll get to the evaluation stage where Steve Ehrenholtz, another man who's working on his DTM, has got an ATM Gold right now. He will be giving us a general evaluation. He has a team that will be introduced by him later. It's an exciting meeting. Please stay tuned. Watch this. You will learn. I guarantee it will be edifying, entertaining, and enthusiastic. Now, it is my pleasure to talk about club business. We have officers training on July 21st in Wilmington, Ohio at the Roberts Center. All 7 of our officers have committed themselves to being there. And by the way, those new officers will be inducted later today in this meeting. Now, it's my distinct pleasure and honor to welcome to the lectern right here in front of you. In fact, actually, this is a podium, since we were up on a raised dais. None other than DTM, outstanding Toastmaster in his own right, voted Mr. Toastmaster 5 times in 3 different penal colonies, Mr. Joe the Man Schwerling.
Thank you, Mr. President. As I stand before you behind this lectern on top of the podium, welcome to everyone to our Toastmasters Club, and feel free to visit any of the 50 Toastmasters clubs in the greater Cincinnati area. Just look under toastmasters.org, find a club, and enter your zip code. We'll get right to it today with our first order of business, which is our presentation by our word power, counter, grammarian, Carol Cormelink, Distinguished Toastmaster.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and our most welcome guests at home. My job as the grammarian, all-counter, word power is to give a word for people to become aware of, to count how many times they use it, to challenge them to use it every time they're up here at the lectern, and then to count how many times they use ahs, ums, and other crutches. And I also count lip smacks, just to warn you. I hate it when people bring these 21-letter words that you'll never use, like psychoneuroimmunology. So I have a very simple word today, and it's idea. Write that on your speech or on your notes when you get up here, and it is pronounced 3 syllables. I-D-A. Do not say idea. Idea has the 3 syllables and not have the R on the end. An idea is a thought, conception, or notion, an impression, a conviction or opinion, a plan of action, an intention or design, a mental picture sometimes merely imagined without corresponding reality, vague knowledge, inkling, a fleeting thought or whim. And my challenge today is not just use it once, use it 2 or 3 times in your presentation up here. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you. Thank you, Carol. Better beware of her, though. She'll criticize us every time we use an I. She'll criticize us every time we use an and then she'll criticize us for using D instead of the. For the next idea, our fun portion of the meeting, please welcome Sheila Mudbaker, our Tabletopics coordinator today. Welcome, Sheila.
Thank you. The word idea is used so often, but I rarely hear people's ideas. I hear their feelings. I hear all sorts of things, but not their ideas, not their thinking about things. So I have 3 questions today. In each case, the person who is answering has not heard this question before and probably is going to be stunned for a second or so before they come up here. Think about what it would be like if you're at home, just kind of like when you watch The Price is Right. Do you know what you would say? So the first question is, what knowledges, skills, and abilities does an entrepreneur need to survive in the business world? Gordon Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Good morning. The skills and ability that an entrepreneur needs to survive in the business world really are unknown because you can't identify them. You can identify certain parts of them, but it's really an unknown factor. My own opinion is that if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, you need to be motivated. And this is actually a good question for me because years ago I looked at going into business a couple of times and I thought about it and checked into the financials and human resources, that sort of thing. And I was to the point where I was ready to go, but there was other things going on in my life and I thought, you know, I'm just not motivated or attentive enough to do it. And a lot of people, if you listen to these people, especially on Wall Street, if you watch that channel, you'll find that even Donald Trump, they go into things whether they really know a lot about it or not. Because Donald Trump is known, for example, his buildings, which his father was also known for. But today, Donald Trump is trying his best to open up a PGA Tour golf course. So he's purchased golf courses, he's put millions of dollars into golf courses, and he's just dying to gain that level because even though he has millions of dollars, there's something prestigious about owning your own golf course and having it on the list of the PGA tournaments. So being an entrepreneur is, I think it's more motivation than actual knowledge about what you're going into. Thank you, Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, Gordon. I know that I'm not motivated to be an entrepreneur because I know that I wouldn't like me as my boss. And that's what you need, is that you must be able to really get along with your boss. Here's the next question. Your 16-year-old daughter says that she wants to get a dragon tattoo which winds around her neck. In an ideal world, what would be your response to this request? Anita? No, not Anita. I am so sorry, Steve.
Thank you, Madam Tabletopics Master, I think. Fellow Toastmasters, our honored guests, and our viewing audience. In an ideal world, what kind of a response would I have if my 16-year-old daughter wanted to have a dragon tattoo that curled around her neck? Well, I can see that this would not be a discussion that would end in just one session. I would ask her what the idea is that she wants to convey to people. Try to get a little perspective on why do you want this? And it would have to be a reason other than everybody else has one, because that one isn't going to fly. I'm sorry. But there are some other things that I think I could do as far as approaching this topic. One of them would be temporary tattoos. And along with that, it would be a search for some of the biggest, ugliest tattoos I can find. But I think that that would give her an opportunity to see what it would look like, and then we'd have to talk about things like, what do you want to wear when you have this tattoo around your neck? And the fact that the only way you're really going to be able to disguise it is with a high turtleneck. And that doesn't work too well when you have weather like we do right now that's pushing 90+ degrees. But really the bottom line, my 16-year-old daughter, I don't have to worry about that because she's a dog, the real quadruped. So I don't think we're going to have to worry about that. But that's an interesting question. Madam Tabletopics Master?
Thank you. admit that was good thinking. The temporary tattoo might be enough. The third question assumes that the person answering and everybody else out there is a registered voter. National elections are getting closer. There are more candidates than most of us can remember who they are. Tell us what would make one of those candidates the one you would probably vote for. So think about the fact that on Democratic and Republican side, there seem to be more candidates than we can remember. But what would it take for you to vote for one of those? Jane?
True. Elections are coming up very soon, and it happens like most countries are having elections around this time. Whenever politicians come in and say they want to run either for presidency or some political office, they have so many ideas. But who has a unique idea? We want to hear something that's not being put out there for people to hear. We don't want to hear the same old ideas being thrown out there as if we don't remember what they were standing for last time. And also, the mudslinging that goes on in the press, that puts me off. And it puts me in a position where are there no other better ways of trying to push your message across apart from attacking your opponent? And when you attack your opponent, it looks like you do not have good things to say about the other person. You might attack your opponent in a positive way where it puts your message across and also shows us what you really stand for, and that's how we can get to vote for you. Thank you.
Well, that's it for Table Topics, and I'll remind you who our 3 Table Topic speakers were. Gordon talked about the knowledge of skills and personal characteristics needed for a successful entrepreneur. Steve talked about if he had a 16-year-old daughter who wasn't already on a leash, how he would manage to deal with the idea of having a dragon tattoo around her neck. And Jane talked about national elections and what draws her to a candidate and what puts her off. So those are the 3, and think about these questions yourself. What if your 16-year-old daughter wanted a tattoo? What if you had to make a very hard decision for elections? And thirdly, what if you wanted to have your own business? Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you much, Sheila, for those interesting ideas. Of course, the best tattoo would be a Toastmasters logo imprinted anywhere where it's visible. We now get into the prepared speech portion of our meeting, and our first speaker today is Anita Barron, one of our newest members, and she will be giving her icebreaker. For the first speech project, the speaker will introduce herself to her fellow club members and give some information about the background, interests, and ambitions. The specific objectives is to begin speaking before an audience and to discover speaking skills she already has and skills that may need some attention. And the time is 4 to 6 minutes. Please welcome Anita Barron with My Dream. My Dream.
My name is Anita Barron, and I've been in Cincinnati area for about 10 years, from Georgia. What accent? And I'm very honored to be here. Thank you. My dream. Each of us have an inner calling, something that as throughout our years, hopefully we've seen it sprinkled throughout our life, and you know, it appear, and then all of a sudden, ooh, that was fun, and then all of a sudden we go, okay, that's not realistic. Let's get back to reality. And so I have myself had that same inner calling, and you'll end up trying to ignore it. Gee, that's not going to work, or you're arguing with it. Well, geez, you can't do that. So there's always a reason why you can't just grab it. Usually, I know some people are very fortunate, and they immediately know from get-go that that's just where they're going to be. They have the idea that I can do this at a very, very early age. But a lot of us, we're later in years whenever we determine that we can do something like this. And so a couple years ago, I said, you know, my argument was, I can't do this. This is a money drainer. It's not something that makes me money. How can I do this whenever I'm trying to get further along in my my husband and I financial life? So I finally said 2 years ago, I'm not where I really want to be financially, but you know what? This is really what I want to do. So I need to do this. And so I started looking at different ways to get involved with my dream. And my dream is that all animals, cats and dogs, homeless animals have a way to find a forever home whenever they do become homeless because of whatever reason. As we know in the United States, our method of getting that problem solved in our counties is basically euthanize them, which is killing them essentially. Healthy animals that in any other circumstance they would be able to be adopted out and loved in a family. And so I thought, okay, you know, I'm volunteering at my shelter, a no-kill shelter, because I'd be springing every animal out the day before their death, you know, warrant. So I had to go to a no-kill shelter, and basically that means they have restricted admittance, so that, you know, they can say, no more, we don't have room. Whereas a county shelter doesn't have that privilege. They have to take in every animal that comes in. And so I said, you know, this is wonderful. I love the animals. You know, I feel like I'm socializing them, helping them, you know, the bridge between their situation now and where they'll be in a future home. But that's not really where the problem is. That's a symptom of the problem. So what is you know, we sat back and looked at it and said, you know, okay, let's look at this in a real fashion. What is the real problem? Okay, well, the real problem is there's too many animals out there. There's just way too many overpopulation of animals out there. And so I said, well, okay, how do you solve that? We know the solution. That's the great part of this. We know how to do this. It's an easy fix. Spay, neuter your animals, every cat and dog. Well, okay, so I looked around and saw there's a lot of the rescue groups that have spay, neuter programs that, you know, offer, you know, funding to the community and stuff like that. And I had the idea, okay, what about, you know, where can these people go in the community that, geez, I can't afford the $200 that the vet charges me for my spay, neuter, or my animal. That's just way out of my budget with the kids and everything else. So I said, okay, here's an idea. Why don't I go ahead and I will become a resource. So I created a nonprofit called Pet Alliance, and that's at www.petalliance.org. And essentially my goal through this organization is to be able to provide the community a resource so that they know where to go whenever they have their problem, that they can't afford it, but they want to do the right thing, and they know that it's the right thing. Okay, so what else can Pet Alliance do to help the community understand? They can another problem with the rescues and the shelters is that they have animals come in that are lost. They're obviously some pet, but there's no ID, there's no microchip that's been implanted, so essentially there's no way this animal can say, I belong to this home. So if the people don't have the forthright, or they don't get there in time, or they stop looking too soon, this animal may very well be euthanized just because he or she was not able to say, I belong to that person. And this happens over and over in shelters. They know it belongs to an animal. It's been loved for years and years. So basically, I located a local spay-neuter clinic, mobile spay-neuter clinic that came to Cincinnati since May of last year. We have spay or neutered 521 cats since then, which is a very good goal. My goal, though, and it's good enough to have a dream, but my goal is to have a phone resource, which I'm starting this year for Spay Ohio, which will be a resource for the state of Ohio for the low-cost spay-neuter programs. In Cincinnati alone, you can spay and neuter a cat for $30 at the local spay-neuter clinic called youcanclinic.org. and $55 for a dog. So there are resources out there. Another goal of mine is to create a community fund that will have $1,000 per week to help these people that are trying to do the right thing in their community. through, they've got all these animals, stray animals that nobody wants to claim, so nobody wants to spend money on them, and essentially we can do that if we just have 160 people donating $25 per month. That'd be $1,000 per week, I'm sorry. So anyway, that's my vision, is to have basically animals that are no longer mass killed because there just is no room for the animals in the shelters. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anita. Our next speaker is Gordon Kelly. And Gordon will be giving speech number 9 from our basic communication manual, which is Persuade with Power. The speaker is to present a persuasive speech that combines logical support for his viewpoint with a strong emotional appeal. The speech should focus on the self-interest of the audience. The time is 5 to 7 minutes. Please welcome Gordon with Where Am I? Where am I, Gordon?
Good morning to our guest here this morning, our members, and the television audience. The name of my speech is Where Do I Start? Have you ever asked yourself, where do I start? How do I start? Or when do I start? Several years ago, my youngest sister, whose name is Ollie, I love the name, that's why I mention it, used to call me, and this was in Chicago, and she would mention Toastmasters. And if you've never heard of Toastmasters, I kept thinking, what is this thing, Toastmasters? Well, every so often when we'd talk, she'd mention Toastmasters. And I kind of went away thinking, that's just like her, joining some goofy club with a bunch of weird people. And I really didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it, even though it had an interesting appeal to it. Well, over a period of time, I thought, I'd better check this out, because she's the type of person that she really gets involved in things, and I said, I'll check this out. I got on the internet, and that's while I'm here in Kentucky, actually over in Kentucky. And I checked it out on the internet, found the number, looked at the schedules, found this club on a Saturday morning, called the number on the internet, and left a message. Well, it wasn't long after that where a lady by the name of Carol Cormelink called me back. And we talked about it a little bit, and I decided, I think I'll try it, and I showed up. And here I am, I guess about 18 months later, I believe, on speech 9. And I do have to admit, the first step was not easy. It was a hard step, just to even look it up on the internet. Well, speaking in front of people has never come easy for me. I get nervous, I get sweaty, and one of the things I found without an organized speech is my mind doesn't seem to work right. It's like I'm looking at people and talking, but it's just not happening right. But over the period of 18 months, I think I've learned to relax, and especially like today, I concentrated on the other speaker and the other people that were doing things and tried to reduce my own nervous energy. And while I've been here at Toastmasters, in that 18-month period of time, I can now walk up to this lectern, look at the guests and the members, and actually speak words into the camera, which totally amazes me. I believe I can safely say also that there's never been a perfect speaker. I know people speak to thousands and sometimes millions, and they give seminars and motivational speeches and win contests, but it's very hard to be a perfect speaker. But knowing that, I think we all have to exert ourselves to be the best speaker that we can be. This brings me to the individuals watching us on television today. There's a reason why you're watching this program, and my suspicion is that you have the same fear that many of us have here, and that is the fear of speaking, at least public speaking. I found some articles on the internet, and in one article addressing stage fright, it says, the fear of public speaking ranks #1 in the minds of the majority of people, far above the fear of death and disease. Far above the fear of death and disease. It ranks. Comes the fear of standing in front of a crowd. And I can personally really relate to that, because to me that I had rather die also than to do public speaking. It's just one of those things. So it's a fact. It's not a myth, it's a fact. The fear of public speaking is reported to be the #1 fear with American adults, with many people experiencing tremendous suffering because of it. This fear often takes a huge toll on people's effectiveness in the workplace and in other settings, as it stops them from fully expressing their thoughts and opinions to other people. It affects not only the timid and socially anxious, but also those who are otherwise seen as confident and outgoing. In Toastmasters, you will find a supportive atmosphere, not a combative one. One of the great things about Toastmasters is that we realize we're here to support each other and not criticize our actions. The mission of this club is to provide a mutually supportive and positive environment in which every member has the opportunity to develop communication leadership skills, which in turn fosters self-confidence and personal growth. Toastmasters International is an organization that was started in California in 1924 by Dr. Ralph Smedley. Today it has over 200,000 members in over 10,500 clubs in 90 countries. And a few former members and present members include Sam Nunn, U.S. Senator, John Young, an astronaut, Debbie Fields Rose, the cookie lady, you've probably all had the Fields cookies, Gordon Kelly, and many other people here today. And here's an idea. I think it would be very hard for me to tell anyone where they're headed in life. It's just a difficult thing to do. You can't do it. But I can absolutely tell you where to start, how to start, and when to start. Toastmasters International, find us on the internet and do it today.
Thank you, Gordon. Toastmasters is always an excellent idea. Our third and final prepared speech for today is from the Humorously Speaking Manual. Speech number 5, the humorous speech, for which the objective is to present a humorous speech based around a theme, but with various humorous elements. And the time is 5 to 7 minutes. And the speaker is myself. And the title of the speech is, Call Me Mr. Lucky. Call me Mr. Lucky. Does anyone feel the same way, that you ought to be called Lucky? I grew up when Mr. Lucky was a popular television series. I've never won a lottery, never won anything over $2 of value, maybe $10 in value, taking in inflation over my 60 years. But overall, I consider myself relatively lucky. One measure of luck that I think a lot of people go by is being healthy, wealthy, and wise. First, we'll take the healthy part. I'm 60 years old. I've never had surgery other than taking out my tonsils. I've never had anything more than 5 stitches, once from my sister's dog, once from falling out of a tree, and once from hitting my finger with a machete. So with all the do-it-yourself activities I pursue, the fact that I haven't had any major surgeries or anything like that, I think is pretty lucky. Never had any major illnesses. The worst thing I can remember was something which the only thing I was able to eat was pretzels and soft drinks, which is some of my favorite foods. So sometimes you get lucky. As a previous federal traveling auditor, I traveled hundreds of thousands of miles over 30 years working for the federal government, and I only had one major accident where I was hit by a big truck. Fortunately, I picked the only spot between Cincinnati and Ripley where you can be hit by a truck and run off the road and go into some bushes, and no significant damage other than losing 3 tires. Suffered no injuries. Just shook up a few of the extra junk that I carry around in my van. I still haven't found the springs that popped out of the coin ejector that I had in there when things are flying around when you're doing a rotation like that. Totally out of my control, but I was lucky in that nothing was damaged. My vehicle continued to service me well for a number of years afterwards, and I didn't mind having the small dent, and I put a little extra cash in my pocket from the damage that I didn't bother to repair. Now, how do you become wealthy? Well, some people, if you have ambition, you can start a business, you can work up through corporate ranks, and you can make a lot of money. Well, my approach was, I graduated from college, went to work for the federal government, promptly got drafted, spent a couple years in the Army, and when I came back, the government job I started with, I had already accumulated promotions and extra leave advances. So that contributed to my wealth. Which, by the way, when you're drafted into the Army in 1968, the fact that you're not sent to Vietnam is a very lucky thing. They sent me to Korea. There was a little bit of shooting, but I was working in a payroll office, so nobody bothered us. Pursuant to my traveling with the government for all those years as a traveling auditor, I became aware of everywhere to buy and find things very inexpensively. I'd find things along the road that people were throwing out thinking they were trash. I was recycling before recycling was possible. I recycle anything. I keep an eye out for things at yard sales, at discount sales, clearance stores. I know most of the franchise operations of stores that carry the kind of things I'm interested in, so as I travel to different cities, I'd hit those same stores and buy those same items. Once I got into Toastmasters, it really became interesting because, like a few years ago, I found some interesting coasters that came in red, yellow, and green in Tuesday morning stores. So in the course of my traveling, I bought several hundred sets of these red, yellow, and green coasters to use as timing devices for Toastmasters. I also picked up a lot of timing stopwatches and things the same way. So anything I can find in red, yellow, and green. In fact, yesterday I just found some yellow building blocks, red, yellow, and green building blocks. They were meant for toys. And for 15 cents a piece, I invested in them. You can stack them up and you can mark your time or speech presentations that way. And they don't require batteries or electricity. So with these kind of things, you're not spending money on the batteries, you're buying stuff inexpensively, that contributes to your wealth. Unfortunately, because I've been so preoccupied with the idea of always looking for these bargains, I never watched my investments. So I never made anything significant in investments. I put money into my 401k and various things. So the money accumulated on its own, but I passed up a lot of opportunities. One opportunity I didn't pass up, but should have, was lending money to my twin sister and her husband before she divorced him to pay for the business and the house that they had that I never got any money back from. So we've covered healthy and wealthy and now wise. Well, after 60 years, I think I've gained a lot of knowledge and wisdom. Now, part of it was by default. Having traveled all those years, I didn't have the opportunity to engage in serious emotional interactions, involvements, so I didn't suffer from any marriages that failed or divorces other than my sister's. Since I didn't smoke and didn't drink, I didn't go out to bars or anything like that, so I didn't waste my money that way. I did waste it on buying a lot of these trinkets and do-it-yourself tools and things that I didn't need. And just the fact that I was single and traveling on an expense account for all those years contributed to my wealth as well. So all these little things add up over the years. I've never won anything. I've never made any major gains from investments, but I've never lost anything major. I've never suffered any major health issues so far. So I consider myself relatively lucky. Those of us that have dreams such as Anita's or Toastmasters' interests that Gordon has expressed, just accomplishing those activities are areas where we're lucky, or in the case of Anita, where the pets that are saved or prevented from dying needlessly are the lucky ones. So there's a lot of luck out there, and luck is where you find it. So as long as you had a nice balance of no bad luck is even better than being the luckiest person in the world with some unluck. So I encourage everyone to stay lucky, or at least not unlucky. Our next portion of the meeting will be the evaluation section, and it will be presided over by our general evaluator today, Steve Ehrenholz. Please welcome Steve Ehrenholz to coordinate our general evaluation session.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Fellow Toastmasters, our guests that are watching in from our viewing audience. This is the evaluation portion of the meeting. This is actually one of the integral components of a Toastmaster meeting. We give people immediate feedback. It's positive feedback. We'll identify what they did well, what we liked about their presentation. We'll also give them some insight into things that they might want to work a little bit more on. What might they try that would enhance their presentation? These comments are given to them both in a verbal presentation, which you will see momentarily, and then they also have a written evaluation that they get from each one of the individuals that comes up here and actually is doing an evaluation of their speech. I'd like to call my first evaluator today, who will be giving us an evaluation of Anita Barron's icebreaker speech, My Dream. Help me welcome Darren Henderson up here to give us his evaluation.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, and especially Anita. Anita, I've very much enjoyed your icebreaker. I think the icebreakers are one of my favorite types of speeches because it's the first time we get to meet you, and it's a very great way to get started in Toastmasters. The purpose of the speech is to let us get to know you. And some people choose to give some kind of a biography when they do their icebreaker. But personally, I like the way you did it a little bit better. Because you told us about one particular thing that's very important to you. And in doing so, we got to know a little bit more about you. I'm sure over the next year or several years, we'll learn more about you. But I thought this was a great way to, instead of telling us, your entire life story in 5 minutes, you told us one particular thing that was very important to you, which I thought was very effective. First off, I think you were very comfortable up here. It was obvious to me that was not the first time you've been in front of a group of people. You have a very pleasant speaking voice and good enunciation. I think that's a good place to start in Toastmasters. You did make some use of notes, but it's not very obvious. When you first started, I could see you kind of peek down just to get a good start and good foothold in the speech, but once you got that first 10 seconds out the way, then you make good eye contact with the audience. As far as the content, as I said, you focused on one particular thing that was very important to you, which is preventing the euthanization of cats and dogs. And, ironically, I watched Bob Barker's last show last night, so there's obviously a need for a new spay and neuter champion in the world, so I think we found one this morning. As you talked about your dream, it was very obvious how emotional you felt about it, and that's one thing that's very great, in that this was your first speech and you had no problem getting that emotion out to the audience, which is very, very impressive. As far as a few things that you might be able to do better or improve upon next time, I would like to see over the next year or so just a few more personal details as you give your next few speeches. Just bring out a couple more details about your life and about other things that are important to you, since you did focus on one aspect this morning for the most part. Also, and I'm terrible about this also, as you can see the last 5 minutes, but try to control your hand gestures, and I'm a terrible person to tell you that, but as you get up here, try to vary your hand gestures. You kind of had one very consistent hand gesture instead of kind of, varying that and using different hand gestures to get across your point. And finally, the only other thing I thought that was something you could work on is you have a particular transition word, which is well, okay, which you used several times in the speech, and after a while it became obvious. So once again, as you will probably see this speech when someone sends you a CD, you will probably pick that up, that is your transition word. So that's one thing to work on for the future speeches. But overall, I think you did a great job. As I said, you were very comfortable, and I'm positive you've spoken in front of people before, because that was not the speech of someone who's never gotten in front of a group of people before. So I thought great content, very good presentation, and I very much look forward to hearing you speak again. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren, for that evaluation. Good job. Our next evaluator will be Ron Althaus, and he is going to share his evaluation with us for Gordon Kelly's speech, Where Do I Start? Ron?
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Master Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, guests, and particularly Gordon. Where do I start? Gordon, what a great topic for a Persuade with Power, because your topic was Toastmasters. So you had the audience. We have the viewing audience and people that are interested in watching this show to find out more about Toastmasters. You have the physical audience here. So a great choice of topic, a great choice. I love the organization of your speech, starting with, was it Ollie? Mm-hmm. Starting with Ollie, and then moving from Ollie to Carol Cormelink, which is quite a transition, by the way. Then Carol Cormelink telling you about Toastmasters, and then eventually talking about your experience in getting involved with Toastmasters, and then transitioning at the end to talk about the audience and how you too in the viewing audience can get involved with Toastmasters and experience some of the same things that you did. I thought your vocal variety was great. You emphasized things with a strength in your voice. I thought your eye contact was wonderful. You scanned beautifully, you pause, you talk to individuals within the audience. I think that's great. A couple of things perhaps to work on. I noticed this hand gesture that you kind of hold one hand in front of the other, which is okay, but it was the predominant hand gesture. And when you're persuading with power, Gordon, you can persuade with power. You know, it's okay. So work on that. A little bit, I think you had some notes up here, and you referred to the notes, particularly towards the end of the speech, which I thought was interesting. I think there were notes about Toastmasters in general. Try to wean yourself from those, because I really think that everything you saw in the notes, you have right here. You really do. And you ended your speech with a call to action to our audience. You know, find Toastmasters. Find them now. Find them quick. Get involved. The other thing I want to say, because I know you're the incumbent club president for this club, is that you have that skill set and that presentation set to enhance your leadership qualities within this club. So I think that's a wonderful thing. I look forward to hearing from more speeches from you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Mr. Master Evaluator?
Thank you, Ron. Another very good evaluation. Our third evaluator today will be Gary Reese, and he is going to give us his evaluation for Joe Schwerling's speech, Call Me Mr. Lucky. Gary?
Fellow Toastmasters, honored guests, and especially none other than Mr. Joe Schwerling. Sir, you and I belong to another club, and there's times when you give the humor of the day as part of the program. And I've got to be honest, I've winced before, during, and after some of your jokes. However, today, you captured the essence of self-deprecating humor, which is powerful. It is funny. I want to go over this with you. What indicated to you that the audience was entertained? The intermittent giggles and laughter. What made the speech humorous? Self-deprecating humor. How well did the jokes or stories fit the theme of the speech? Basically, you were talking about the luck factor, the stretch of luck that you've had. And it got a little awkward in some of the segues, because you went from being lucky to talking about success, and then from success defining what success was: healthy, wealthy, and wise. And you had to really pay attention in order to draw that string and capture what it is you were trying to say. I did that, so you were successful in that way, but it was just a little bit awkward. How well did the speaker's body language and vocal variety add impact to the speech? Here is where you could have been a lot stronger, because your particular topic, your theme, lent itself excellently to body language. But yet, like Gordon was talking about our previous speaker, you had your hands like this or had your hands like this predominantly. This was an opportunity for you to talk about, I've never been lucky. I went to Las Vegas, I put a quarter in a machine and couldn't give it a can of pop out. I knew to stay away from the slots. I would hit that slot machine and boom, whim ba bum bum bum, whim ba bum bum, whim ba bum. Never did I hear a cha-ching. We never got any of that. No body language, none of that. You just stayed here like this, and you relied solely on your content rather than adding to your presentation, which is a huge, huge must and a factor in being a successful speaker. How well did the speaker tie stories and jokes together? Were the transitions smooth? At times they were smooth, and other times they were awkward. One thing you said that I got a huge kick out of, and it resonated with me, and I got a really good laugh out of, was you started talking about how it's not always good luck that you have to have, it's just don't have bad luck. And then you started talking about the different types of luck: unluck, de-luck, anti-luck, de-luckification. And you know, that worked for you. I got a kick out of that. What could the speaker have done to improve this presentation? I think if you added just a little bit more humor and a little less on building the story itself, this would have been an even better speech. It was good as it was. More body language and just a little bit more humor, a little less building on the stories themselves. That would have made this a better presentation. I look forward to hearing more from you, Joe. You're a fantastic speaker. I love hearing your stories. Thank you very much for today's presentation.
Thank you, Gary. At this point, we are going to hear from our counter and grammarian. This is where we're going to learn about the different verbal crutches that we're using. We're also going to learn about some of those fillers that we use when we're trying to think of what we'll say next. And instead of just being quiet, we have to say something, even if it doesn't really mean anything. Help me welcome Carol Cormelink.
Thank you, Ron. I like the idea of being able to let people know their verbal crutches. I was going to compliment Gary today because he had no lip smacks until he got to Joe's evaluation, and then you had 4. But you didn't have any before that. I was going, oh, good, he's aware of that. Ron had 1 lip smack, Joe had 2, and Gordon had 1 that I counted. We do have to learn to enunciate just a little bit better because we are saying, I can do this instead of I can do this. It just did this instead of just. And that 3 people used it just 7 times. I heard to set back, and I think it's sit back. I heard get instead of get, getting instead of getting. Oh, I did have 1 correction, Gordon, when you said thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, when you were doing Tabletopics. It's Tabletopics, Madam Tabletopics Master. I did hear a 4th right, and I thought it should have been foresight. On the ahs and ums, Anita, for your first speech, I've had people where they get up for their first speech and they have 66 uhs. You had only, I thought I count, yes, 23. One of your crutches that I caught, I didn't catch the one that Steve said, or whoever it was, or somebody. You know about 9 times, and then you use know a lot. People know this or people know that. And the reason if I were not counting the grammar, these were not so apparent that they would disturb my train of thought. So if I had not been counting them, I wouldn't have seen or heard. I wouldn't have heard, not seen. I did hear a lot of so. Steve likes stow. Darren 3 times. Anita 8 times. Joe 5 times. Sheila once. Jane twice. Ron 4 times. Steve is using a combined pause and with his and. Did that several times. Joe did it once. Heard some double clutches where you start a sentence, I, that I, and. I've heard those. The word of the day was a good word today. We got the idea to use it. Sheila used it twice. Steve used it twice. Jane used it 4 times. Joe used it 5 times. Anita used it once. And Gordon missed an opportunity when you said about thoughts and opinions. You missed the opportunity to put thoughts, ideas, and opinions. One thing that I did notice, the incongruity of laughing at Joe's hitting his finger with a machete. We laughed, and I guess it was because it was incongruous that was lucky. So there, I just used a so. That's my report. Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Carol. I had a few things I wanted to comment on as far as some of the evaluators today. Darren, I thought your evaluation of Anita's speech was excellent. You have a very good way of talking directly to the speaker, yet including us. But you're encouraging. I liked the specifics that you gave us as far as your evaluation, your discussion on her use of hand gestures. One of the things you could have also given her as some positive feedback was the fact that she actually did some things like when she said, I wanted to step back and think, what is the underlying problem? And she actually did step back. So that was one of the things that she did. Ron, I thought you did a very good job of tying in the speech topic with the objectives of the speech. Persuade with power, which was Gordon's objective. Nice review of how the speech was assembled. You picked up on the hand gestures, which is one of the things that I was going to comment on if you didn't. So I want to commend you on that. And the strength of the ending of his speech. I thought that that was a very nice way to end your evaluation. Good job, Gordon. Gary, I thought your evaluation was good as well. You talked about the self-deprecating humor. You talked about Joe's use of hand gestures, that he could have used a little more vocal variety, and that he had to try and introduce a bit more body language. Joe, I think for you, at the point where you are in your Toastmasters career, or, well, I guess it's a career, you've been in it a long time, one of the things I'd really like to see you work on is eliminating the hand gestures with the hand flinging. To me, that's one of your trademarks, and I don't think that's a trademark you want to have. So I'd like to see you learn to do some other things with your hands than some of this, which I think is actually unconscious, hand flinging. Our grammarian and counter did a real good job. I heard about some of the things that I do that I don't want to hear about doing. And Mary did a very good job of timing. Nice report. I'm going to turn it back to our Toastmaster for today. Mr. Toastmaster?
Thank you very much, Steve, for the interesting ideas on from the evaluation portion of our meeting. And I will conclude just by reminding the audience how lucky you have been, both to be seeing our meeting today, and even the fact that you know that Toastmasters exists. I worked 20 years of my career traveling around before I even know such a thing as Toastmasters existed. So you're already lucky. Keep up the luck. Keep an outlook for the opportunities, and ideas will come to you on how to continue to be lucky and avoid being unlucky. Please welcome our president back, Jerry Reed.
Well, now, was this a great meeting or what?
Yes.
Earlier, when I first took the lectern up on the podium, I had thrown around a couple of acronyms. I said that there was DTMs and ACGs, and I threw a bunch of those letters around. And let me give just a quick explanation. When you've done your first 10 speeches, you become what's called a competent communicator, or a CC. It's your first level. It's like your union card in Toastmasters. When you go further and give 10 more speeches, you become a advanced Toastmaster bronze, or advanced communicator bronze, an ACG. Pardon me, ACB. And when you give 10 more speeches and do a few other things, you become an advanced communicator silver, and then an advanced communicator gold, and ultimately you become an advanced Toastmaster to the length of where you become a DTM, distinguished Toastmaster. These are all just letters that are important to us in the organization, and hopefully when you become a Toastmaster, they'll be important to you as well too, because we believe that anything can be measured can be done. And we measure ourselves, we measure our club. We have goals that we have to achieve in order to become a distinguished club. It's our trademark, it's our hallmark, it's what makes us, us. It's how come we achieve. And we're the #1 organization in the world in communication and leadership skills. Now, with that said, this is my last meeting as president of TV Toastmasters 9523. I want to thank each and every one of you, all the members in this club that have helped to make it the club it is today. We went from a history of never being distinguished before to being a distinguished club this year. As you can see, we have 3 ribbons on this banner that were just placed there this year. We had no ribbons previously. We've got 2 more that are on the way. That's 5 ribbons in 1 year. That's very unusual for any club, near less a club that's an advanced club that only meets once per month. We do things right here. We take pride in what we do at TV Toastmasters. Hope that you'll become involved. Come here to the station on the third Saturday of each month, and we'll get an opportunity to put you in front of the camera. We'll give you a Tabletopics question, get you involved. With that said, I would love to have the opportunity now to close this meeting. Pardon me, I'm remiss. I have guests to introduce first, don't we? We need to talk about any guests that were here today whatsoever, what their thoughts were on this meeting. Is there anybody here who would like to volunteer?
No guess.
Okay, the meeting was perfect. It's obvious. We have a consensus. Is the installation going to be done on camera?
Doesn't matter because we'll be cut.
Okay, then.
They have it on camera because then we can check that.
Nikki, are you ready? So today, I conclude at this point in time the meeting of TV Toastmasters 9523 till next month.